Hey everyone, welcome to Toons. I'm Luke, and in today's episode I'm going to be giving you my non-spoiler review of Wolfwalkers. So this video is part of my coverage of the Manchester Animation Festival 2020, which this year is an online event due to pretty much everything that's going on. Now Wolfwalkers is the latest film coming from Cartoon Saloon. Cartoon Saloon is of course a famous animation studio coming from Ireland, specifically in Kilkenny. And Cartoon Saloon in particular has a very close relationship with the Manchester Animation Festival. When I went to the very first festival in 2015, they were debuting their then new film Song of the Sea, and they delivered a masterclass at the event. A few years later they debuted the Oscar-nominated film The Breadwinner, and now this year they're back with Wolfwalkers. Incredibly exciting stuff. Now the film itself doesn't actually come out till the 11th of December, so this of course was an exclusive preview of the film. But if you have missed out on your chance to see it at the festival, don't worry, it isn't too long before the film actually does come out. But more on that later. And as such, because it isn't out in what I released, this will be a non-spoiler review. Do not worry, I'm not going to ruin anything from the film. We're mainly going to be talking about my more general feelings on the film. So you're probably wondering, what actually is this film about? So Wolfwalkers tells us the story of Robin, a little English girl that came over to Ireland with her father. Her father is a hunter that is known across the lands for his skills and prowess when it comes to hunting wolves. And this film is set in the town of Kilkenny in 1680. And in this film the town has a wolf problem. See, the farmers need to expand their land and grow more crops for the town, which means they need to chop down the forest. But every time they go to cut part of the forest down, they are attacked by wolves. Robin is of course presented as a child in a setting unfamiliar to her, and she just wants to stay close to her father and help him as she used to do back in England. But the town has very strict rules and children are not allowed to leave the town's walls. But Robin's not going to let that stop her. No, that would not exactly be the most interesting film, would it? Because one day after following her father into the forest, Robin comes across Maeve, a wild child that roams with the wolves. See, Maeve has a secret. She and her mother are wolfwalkers, meaning that when they go to sleep they reawaken as wolves. She said her mother went out one night looking for a new place to live and never returned. It is then up to Robin and Maeve to form the unlikeliest of friendships and solve the problems that are laid before them. Okay, that's it, I'm not going to say any more. I don't want to dive too deeply into this film in this video. So what did I think? I loved this film. I really enjoyed it. When you actually unlock an event at the festival, you are only given 24 hours to watch it before you no longer have access to it. But it was so good that I decided to watch it twice within that time. Sure, that time maybe could have been better spent watching something else, but I've got 2 weeks, I'll be This film was just a delight to watch from start to finish. You know, almost everything about it I just loved to soak in and enjoy. You know, at first when I started watching the film I was like, oh, this is good, I quite like this, I'm enjoying this, and like the more I watched it, the more I got into it, and I do think the film just built upon itself and it just became stronger and stronger as the film went on. And I'm going to be honest, this might be one of the strongest third acts I've seen in a long time in a film. One or two elements of it might have been slightly predictable, but it was still satisfying to watch nevertheless. You know, as much as I've enjoyed all the previous Cartoon Saloon films, I do think this might be the best one they've made, and I also feel like it has maybe the best opportunity to be seen by a lot of people. All the films have been really good, but I don't feel like they've necessarily reached the widest of audiences, even with things like Oscar nominations. You know, but with this film debuting on streaming, I definitely think it has the potential to reach such a wide audience, which is incredibly exciting, and I hope it raises lots of opportunities for the studio in the future. So what is it I loved so much about this film? Well, where do we start? How about the plot? I really enjoyed the plot of this film. I think the basic plot of the film is quite simple, but it was done incredibly well, and they were able to layer in certain elements that added a lot of depth to the film. You know, it was definitely really interesting to see how, even though this is an incredibly Irish film, it has the Irish setting, it's made by an Irish studio, and it has a lot of Irish culture in it. I thought it was quite interesting that the story centred around an English girl, but in a way that might be sort of genius, as it allowed both the town and the forest to be completely unfamiliar territory to her that she would be slowly introduced to over the film. which makes her a perfect audience surrogate for people who are not from that culture, and even people who are from the culture who aren't necessarily familiar with what Kilkenny was like in 1860. It really helps pull the audience into the film and invites them along on the adventure with Robin as you are introduced to things as she is. I also thought it was really interesting how they were able to depict both two different aspects of Irish culture within the film by showing the townsfolk and then the Wolfwalkers in the forest. It sort of shows the pagan culture and rituals of old, as well as showing the town which is under strict English rule, depicting the Cromwellian Ireland. And the directors were talking about how even though Irish are traditionally so resistant to English and their culture, the fact was that English were there so long and had such a long-lasting impact on the country that the English culture seeped into and became ingrained in the Irish culture. And they felt that to truly depict Ireland in that time period, they would have to acknowledge the English presence in the country. But just because Robin and her father in the film are fairly positive forces, doesn't mean the film depicts the English as all rainbows and sunshines, as the film's main antagonist was the Lord Protector of the town, who, although never outright stated to be Oliver Cromwell, it's very clear that that is who the character is meant to be. Although I will say at points and with his character design, he did remind me slightly of Governor Ratcliffe, who was of course the villain from Disney's Pocahontas, which was also about the English conquering other countries in the 1600s. And they both play a kind of similar role. I did find it interesting that they also sort of looked alike. I'm sure it was mainly a coincidence, but I do also think they were just sort of drawing on the same things. They were from a similar time period and the same culture, so a lot of things like the costuming you would expect to remain similar. And they were probably drawing on similar influences, although one was based off Oliver Cromwell and the other based off John Ratcliffe, who were both real life people. I will say I do think the Lord Protector here is actually a much stronger character than the one from Pocahontas. I was just very much getting similar vibes from the character. Now, speaking of what the film looks like, this film is utterly beautiful to look at. This is one of those films that proves that every frame truly is a painting. This film sort of uses this sort of offset printing technique that was very common in the 1960s and would commonly come from things from photocopiers or a Xerox machine. It's a look that you found in a lot of 60s comic books, and yes, it was replicated in Spider-Verse, but it's also a look you see in the background art of a film that is near and dear to my heart, and that is Disney's 101 Dalmatians. I was watching the film and I was like, ooh, that reminds me of 101 Dalmatians, particularly the background art. And then listening to the director's Q&A, they said that that was actually one of the influences and that's what they were going for. Well, they certainly achieved it and it works really well here. Whereas 101 Dalmatians uses it to capture London in the 1960s, here it's used to capture the 1680s of Ireland, which as you can imagine has a completely different aesthetic. It's one of the few techniques that is actually used in both the town and the forest, as both of those locations I found, although still being cohesive enough to be within the same film, had almost completely different feelings about them. The town itself has very straight and angulated architecture, whereas the forest feels very natural and organic in nature, since it's nature. But unlike something like 101 Dalmatians, the offset printing is even applied to sections of the character animation. Their characters' hair and hoods all have this sort of offset printing technique where the colour of the hair or hood overspills from the line art. And it really just helps ingrain the animation into the background and it helps to make them feel a little less separated. In the Q&A they talked about how the angulated designs of the town were actually inspired by traditional woodcuts and how you'd find the structures of cities and castles to be depicted as such in those woodcuts. Whereas the forest had a lot of organic shapes and felt very natural and curvy and flowy. It also felt incredibly sketchy and had lots of rough edges to it, which helped give the forest character. There are a few truly beautiful stylistic moments set within the town that featured almost split screens that helped to really emphasise what was going on in the moment. I will say the first time one of these stylistic split screen things happened, it did take me aback a bit because we were about half an hour into the film and this hadn't happened yet. But then once it did happen, I very much warmed up to it. I was like, this is an incredibly powerful way to help tell the story. And once it was starting to be used a bit more consistently through the film, it didn't feel anywhere near as jarring anymore. But I talked about the clean and rough nature of the architecture and the background art of the film. Well, that actually applied to the animation as well, as we found a lot of the townsfolk were done in completely cleaned up animation, whereas the wolves and the Wolfwalkers were animated in an incredibly rough style, a lot of the rough animation was left in, and you could see sort of the pencil lines or the digital pencil lines underneath like the colour of the wolves, which again is something that reminded me very much of 101 Dalmatians, particularly the scenes animated by Milk Cow, who refused to let the clean-up artist rub out his construction lines. Well, all the construction lines are on display here in this film, and it is truly beautiful to look at. I definitely have a soft spot for putting the rough animation into the final film. As much as I love having everything cleaned up, it's nice to see like where it came from, and I think it adds character to the film, and it just makes it feel so much more alive, and to me it makes it feel more magical because it reminds you that all this started with just drawings on paper. Okay, so the film was actually only available for a short period of time at the festival, most likely due to deals with Apple. The film was available to watch from Wednesday the 18th to Saturday the 21st of November, but unfortunately I've taken a little too long to make this review and get the video out to you, so it is not available for you to watch anymore. However, don't fret, because the film will be available on Apple TV from the 11th of December, which is just an amazing opportunity because I feel like it gives so many people the ability to watch this film that probably never would have even heard of Cartoon Saloon in the past. And if you don't already have Apple TV, I believe you are able to easily pay for 1 month's subscription, which is probably cheaper than the cost of actually renting a film, and then just unsubscribe before the month is over. And let me tell you guys, it is definitely worth it for this film. Additionally, if you have bought an Apple product within the last year, I believe you do get a 1-year subscription to Apple TV for free, so you might actually already have the service and just not know about it. But I think this film is incredibly exciting and incredibly beautiful, and I definitely think this is something that everyone will be excited to watch. And I don't think anyone's going to regret watching it. I honestly can't really think of any complaints about this film. I just loved every minute of it, and I certainly can't wait till the 11th of December so that I can get the opportunity to watch the film again. Maybe I'll watch it with my family this time. So of course, obviously this was a non-spoiler review. I didn't really want to get into anything too detailed, as I know most of you won't have had the opportunity to watch this film, but don't worry, when the film is available on Apple TV, we will be diving into everything. There will definitely be a spoiler review for this film. You know, I think it's probably one of the bigger animated films of the year, and I'm definitely going to be excited to talk about it some more with you. But until then, why don't you stick around for more content where I cover different things from the Manchester Animation Festival and much, much more. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, it really helps us out. And if you've not done so yet, why don't you hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell to be notified the next time we dive down the tube of tunes. And if you're wondering what the next video is for covering the Manchester Animation Festival, we're going to be taking a look at the making of The Monster in the Kitchen, also from Cartoon Saloon. It's their short film that they made in collaboration with Greenpeace. We're going to talk about the short, we're going to talk about the making of, we're going to talk about the Q&A, all that good stuff. It's going to be tubular. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Cheers. Thanks for watching Tube of Tunes. If you want more from the channel, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on, follow us on our socials. Hope you liked it. Cheers.